Hello again, boxing fans. I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly, and you're watching a Neutral Corner for the week of January 30th. All right, so there's still not a lot going on when it comes to the boxing schedule. 2016 has been really dead so far, but we're going to get into some of the fights that happened and some of the stuff that's coming up. Real quick first, wanted to give a quick shout out to the guys at Boxing Hype. Thank you so much for the gear. These guys sent me a whole package, a bunch of stuff. Guys, check them out, Boxing Hype. They're really active on Twitter and all the social media stuff. Their stuff is really comfortable. It's stylish, it's cool. Be sure to check them out. But let's go ahead and get into the ring walk. All right, this week's question was actually a YouTube question attached to last week's The Neutral Corner by Tony Yayo. And he asks, can Luis Ortiz work his way into a title shot due to his powerful backers at Golden Boy and HBO, but there's little talk of him? And then underneath his YouTube question, another guy, Timmy Turner, he responded and said, yes, and he will. And he posted an article. And the article is basically about the WBA heavyweight title situation right now. So I just kind of wanted to expand on that to talk about this situation. So look, you guys know I've been very critical of the WBA, and there are multiple titleists in each weight class. Well, right now, the way it works out with the WBA heavyweight title is Tyson Fury is the super champion, right? He got that title when he beat Vladimir Klitschko late last year. The regular champion is Ruslan Chagaev. He won that vacant title by beating Frezzo Kendo, of all people. Remember Frezzo Kendo? He's still fighting. He beat him last year to get the regular WBA heavyweight title. And the interim champion, quote unquote, is Luis Ortiz. He got that title last year. So nobody's jumping or, to try to get in the ring with Luis Ortiz. But because he holds a piece of the fractured WBA heavyweight title, I do think he's eventually gonna get a crack at a real title shot. And we all know Tyson Fury is the real WBA heavyweight champion. He's actually the overall lineal heavyweight champion, right? He's not just a titleist, but he has that WBA strap, the real WBA strap. So Ortiz has the interim title. He doesn't have an opponent scheduled yet, it's just TBA, but he does have a fight scheduled coming up on an HBO card in a couple of months, I think. And I think he's gonna headline that card. But so far, no opponent scheduled. It's just a voluntary defense of his interim title. Ruslan Chagaev has a fight scheduled with Australian fighter Lucas Brown. The winner of that fight has to fight Frezzo Kendo again. I don't know all the details. I didn't feel like going into it because I just don't rate Frezzo Kendo, but there was some loophole, some bylaw or something with the WBA and how it all worked out the first time. Apparently there was controversy about the decision when he lost to Chagaev last year. Frezzo Kendo went to court and he won the court settlement, and because of that, the winner between Chagaev and Brown has to fight Frezzo Kendo. So that person with the regular title, whether it be Chagaev or Brown, is going to be tied up for the rest of the year negotiating with Frezzo Kendo. Tyson Fury, obviously we all know, is rematching Vladimir Klitschko. Now, the date, there isn't a date set yet, but the proposed date keeps getting pushed back, and it looks like it might actually be in June now before they finally fight. It keeps getting pushed back. There's rumors it could be in England, but I'm 90% sure it's going to be in Germany. So May, probably June, Fury, Klitschko are going to do battle. You figure the winner of that will take a voluntary defense next. So Ortiz, he's not going to get a crack at either of those titleists anytime this year. But you figure at some point next year, he'll get to go after the WBA regular or the WBA super title. It's probably going to be the regular title. If he wins that, then he can try to go after the super title. So it's a convoluted mess. But if Luis Ortiz keeps on winning and stays active, he's eventually going to get a crack at the full WBA champion, whether that be Tyson Fury or Vladimir Klitschko at some point next year. The rest of the division does not want to fight the guy. So if you're Luis Ortiz and his backers, you just stick with the WBA, you pay the sanctioning fees, you play by their rules, and I know it's a big mess, but eventually you're gonna get your shot. I hope that answers your question, and I hope that brings a little bit of clarity to you guys out there that were wondering what's going on with the WBA heavyweight mess right now. All right, so last week we had a couple of cards that actually ended up being better than I think we expected, right? Let's start with Friday in Arizona. Heavyweight, Jerrell Miller, American heavyweight, scores a 7-round TKO over Donovan Dennis. Knocked him down twice in the first round. And to Dennis's credit, you know, he survived, he hung really, really tough. It actually started to put a little bit of heat on Miller in some of those middle rounds, but then Miller got his second wind. He got back to the jab, started boxing, set everything up again, and then closed the show. Dennis took a beating in that fight, and I thought the fight personally could have been stopped well before it was. But either way, it goes in the books as a KO win for Miller. He's now 16-0 with 14 KOs. Look, he weighed, I think, 275 pounds for this fight, somewhere in that range, somewhere around 280 pounds. That's just too damn heavy. He wears the weight well compared to other fat heavyweights that we can think of. You know, I kind of call Jerrell Miller the East Coast Chris Arreola because he's out of New York and Arreola's out of SoCal here. But Arreola has, you know, just flab, right? It just hangs off of him. And other guys like Andy Ruiz and stuff. Miller, it's still flabby. He's got that muscle fat. He's got bitch tits, but it seems to be a little more fitting on him. But this guy needs to get down to 250 pounds. He looks straight up gassed for several rounds in this fight. Now, he does have a lot of good fight experience. As I mentioned last week, he sparred with the Klitschko brothers. He had a kickboxing career before he got into boxing, so he knows how to fight. And he knew to get back to the jab and settle down, and then he set the KO up. But look, this was against Donovan Dennis, right? He goes and steps up against a top 20 heavyweight, top 10 heavyweight. He's not gonna be able to get by like this. He's got power, he's got craft. He seems to think in the ring. I like all that, but he's got to get the weight down. Now in the main event, middleweight, undefeated middleweight, Rob Brant, another American that looks very, very promising, improved to 19-0 with 12 knockouts with a 4th round KO over DeCarlo Perez. And what I liked about it is it was just textbook. He set it up with 2 jabs. He had DeCarlo backing up. I think he landed the first jab, barely, just kind of pawed with it. The second jab, the first jab went on like straight, and then the second jab went to the side and kind of he just moved it this way and went like that. I don't know how else to say it, right? He just kind of waved it out there to blind DeCarlo, and then came with that straight right. It was beautiful. And just DeCarlo was destroyed. It was a great highlight reel knockout. I think that it's probably the early candidate for knockout of the year. I rate it higher than Deontay Wilder's knockout just because it was more textbook. You know, Deontay Wilder's knockout of Szpilka a couple weeks back, Szpilka was diving in with his head down, and it was a pretty knockout. It's definitely a candidate too. But this was all Brant, backing his man up. Jab, jab, right. It was just textbook. It was straight. It was sharp. Really, really nice. And with Rob Brant, man, he looks really good. He's a prospect to keep an eye on. He's in the middleweight division, American guy, very good amateur background. You know, possibly he could get in the mix with some of these titleists at the middleweight division very, very soon. He's not quite there yet, but he's ready to fight a top 10 guy. I believe that. The one thing I want to see from him is a little more head movement. I thought that he got hit a little too much, and he's going to have to tighten some of that up. But the offense, he does everything really, really beautifully. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. So Saturday, Joseph Parker, undefeated heavyweight. He had a fight in Samoa, scored a 8th round TKO over Jason Bergman. He knocked him down in the 2nd, 7th, and 8th. He improves to 18-0 with 16 knockouts. I actually watched this one. I caught it on YouTube, and just highlights of it. I didn't get to see the whole thing, but just like a highlight package somebody sent to me. And You know, Parker hits hard, obviously we know that. But he was fighting a guy that, you know, was just there to go rounds. To me, Parker looked a little sloppy in this fight. And I don't know if he fell in love with his power because he put this guy down early or what, but he looked a little sloppy to me, and he took a lot of punches. I noticed that he took some punches from Bergman. He handled them very, very well. And I gotta say, so far of all these heavyweight prospects, these undefeated heavyweights, these giant young guys coming up, and I include Deontay Wilder in that too, this guy, Joseph Parker, seems to have the best chin. Every time I've seen him get tagged, he just walks right through it. He's got a thick neck, walks right through every punch. He hasn't fought a really, really big puncher yet, but you think about guys like Anthony Joshua, you think about Wilder earlier in his career, and even recently against Eric Molina, those guys were buzzed by average heavyweight punchers. So far, Parker really seems to have a really, really good chin from what I've seen so far, but he looked sloppy in this one. Maybe he was fighting down to the level of his opposition, I don't know, but he needs to tighten that up a little bit. But for now, I like that he's staying busy, he's closing the show, he's doing what he's supposed to do in there. Also Saturday here in Los Angeles, obviously there was a big PBC card, right? It was a triple header. And with the first fight, let's start with the heavyweight match. Dominic Breazeale, undefeated American heavyweight, big guy, 6'7", big frame, just really wide, big frame. Usually tall guys like that, you know, were more slender. This dude is built like a compact 5'9" running back in the NFL, only 6'7". He was losing the fight against Amir Mansour. Then in the 5th round, I believe it was, or the 6th round, after the 5th round, coming into the 6th round, Amir Mansour quit on his stool. Mansour had put Breazeale down in the 3rd round, and I thought, you know, was probably dominating the fight on the cards at that point. I don't know how you could have given Breazeale more than 1 or 2 rounds max at that point in the fight. I was critical at first when I actually tweeted about it. When I saw Mansour quit, I was like, what? You quit on your stool, you're winning this fight, you've been robbed, you served 8 years in jail, you've had a tough freaking life, this was your chance, you're freaking quitting on your stool. Well, come to find out, it wasn't just a simple broken jaw. Anyone who's ever broken a jaw or anything like that, it hurts like a bitch. Anyone who's ever hurt in a nose or broken nose, it hurts. And I've done both, okay? I've broken my nose, it hurts, but you can fight through it. You can get through it if it's a small, simple break. Apparently, he broke his face, Amir Mansour. There were several breaks, and one of them was so bad that like he cut his tongue. Like his tongue was almost in half or something from what I'm hearing. So he was really, really busted up. And you know, looking back, any criticism of Mansour quitting on a stool, guys, that's ridiculous. He had a legitimate, really, really bad injury. And through all this guy's been through and the toughness he's shown, I think it's pretty clear that he wouldn't just walk out like that from an opportunity like this. So the injury was legit, and we need to give him a pass on this, and we need to be more understanding of fighters choosing to retire when they have a bad injury like that. For Dominic Breazeale, you know, I still think it's a KO waiting to happen. He did get put down in this fight. He took the punishment well, and he responded well, and he showed some real fighter spirit and real fighter's mentality to get back up and fight back. And he actually kind of fought better after being put down and landed some nice hard shots that actually damaged Mansour. These weren't headbutts that caused the injury or something. These were punches. So you gotta give Breazeale that much credit. He does get hit a lot. He's slow of foot, doesn't move his head. I will say this though, I noticed this about Breazeale. He tucks his chin well. He really, really does tuck his chin well. And I even saw him doing a slight tuck into the shoulder. He's got a big freaking shoulder, so he can't go like this, you know, because he's so big. It's more like this. But he was tucked into his shoulder pretty well. So when he gets hit, he takes the shots well. I gotta give him that much credit. But dude needs to just work on head movement and learning to use his height. That's one thing that Deontay Wilder's become very, very good at. I gotta give him credit. He uses his length very well. And it's something Breazeale just hasn't learned yet. But he gets the W here and keeps his undefeated record intact. Now, in the second fight, it was a welterweight contest. Sammy Vasquez wins by 6th round retirement over Aaron Martinez. Martinez, I guess, injured his left elbow. Now, this was a case where I thought, you know, that injury wasn't severe enough to where Martinez needed to retire on a stool, at least not right then. He could have tried a couple more rounds, but he was being thoroughly dominated in this fight. There was no way he was going to win the fight. I think he knew that, especially, you know, he needed a knockout to win. He only had one hand. So again, he retires on a stool. Try to be understanding of that. For Sammy Vasquez, very good technical fighter. I won't say very good, quality, solid technical fighter. Does everything pretty well, doesn't do anything spectacular. Looked good against a guy who, you know, a solid technical fighter should look good against. Doesn't hit very hard, doesn't do anything that excites me. I like Sammy Vasquez, I like the story. How could you not get behind this guy in the story? You know, serving 2 tours over in Iraq, you know, our servicemen and servicewomen do not get enough respect in this country. That's an issue I feel very deeply about. But he just doesn't excite me. I'm just not excited to see the guy in the ring again. There just was nothing there that made me think, man, I gotta see this guy again. But he keeps his undefeated record intact, and you gotta think he's gonna get a shot at one of these belts that the PBC has with the WBC. The WBC, the PBC, and the welterweight division, they're all in business together. So Sammy Vasquez, he looks to have a big payday coming up down the line. Now in the main event, Danny Garcia scores a unanimous decision win over Robert Guerrero in a fight that I thought was going to be horrible and completely one-sided. It actually turned out to be fairly decent. The scores were 116, 112 3 times. That's exactly how I scored it. There were fans there booing the decision. I've seen people on Twitter saying it was a robbery. Of course, Robert Guerrero and his father, who just has turned into a comic book character, they, you know, were claiming they were robbed and they really won the fight. I expect them to say that. But boxing fans should know better. Guys, this was not a robbery. To me, this was a competitive fight, but it wasn't close. The hard punches from about the 4th, 5th round on were being landed by Danny Garcia. He was landing hard, crisp shots that were snapping Guerrero's head back. Guerrero has always had a very good chin. Danny Garcia's power has never really been world class. So, you know, Guerrero took the shots well, but I didn't see much landing from Guerrero that was significant after the middle rounds. Now in the early rounds, he roughed up Garcia a little bit, and he did land, you know, clipping, like winging kind of shots. And sometimes those kind of shots, when you are throwing wide looping punches and you land with the side of your glove and you know, or you land maybe with your forearm, sometimes your elbow, those are the kind of shots that can mark up a guy's face quicker sometimes than a straight shot. But if you're scoring a fight, you don't score a fight based on how a guy's face looks. Garcia had some marks and some scuffs on him, but if you just watch the damn fight again, if you really feel that this was some kind of robbery or it should have been a draw or something, it wasn't. Danny Garcia clearly won. So where does this leave Robert Guerrero? Look, for him, I still think he's a blown up lightweight. Even with all the CrossFit training he does and all this, you know, he's not a welterweight. He maybe should try to go down to a $140 for one last title opportunity if that's what he really wants to do. But at this point, he's become pretty much a gatekeeper for top-level welterweights. Now, because he's associated with Al Haymon and the PBC, there's always going to be fights for him. You know, he could end up fighting Sammy Vasquez next for some vacant title or something. Who knows? But at what point, you know, why? At what point do you walk away and just say, man, I've made enough money? Guerrero's made millions of dollars. He's done very, very well for himself in boxing. Him and his family are set. So at what point, you know, should he walk away? I think it's very, very near, because I can't think of a fight he's been in recently where he didn't get whooped on to some degree and take a lot of shots. At some point, that's going to start to really take an effect on him and his health. But Danny Garcia, he's just another guy that does everything good, but doesn't do anything great for me. But he's a Puerto Rican. There's a fan base there. East Coast fighter, so he kind of brings a fan base from the East Coast with him. Undefeated, probably shouldn't be undefeated, but technically he's undefeated. Floyd Mayweather was sitting in the stands. I've been saying it for a long time. They've been grooming Danny Garcia as fodder for Floyd Mayweather. He's tailor-made for Floyd. He's not a big welterweight. He wasn't even a big 140 in my opinion. Doesn't hit hard, not particularly fast. He's shorter than Floyd, arms are shorter. Perfect matchmaking for Floyd. So I'm not gonna make some big bold prediction here, but don't be surprised if when Floyd comes back later this year or early next year, Danny Garcia is the guy. Okay, so this week for boxing action, we get our first LA Fight Club card of the year. Friday, downtown LA, just 3 miles from my place here at the Belasco Theater. A couple of undefeated prospects with Golden Boy from the LA area are going into the ring to his co-mains. Look, Golden Boy is doing a great job with these cards, and just a great job in general by really building something here in Los Angeles. They have several prospects, mostly in the lower weight classes, but several prospects from Los Angeles or SoCal, and they're putting them out in these local cards here in these club events, and they're really building up a fan base here. They're doing it right, man. So Julian Ramirez, 15-0, 8 knockouts, 22-year-old featherweight, LA-based. He's going up in a 10-rounder against Christopher Martin. Fighter is 28-6-3. Then Abraham Lopez, 19-0-1, 14 knockouts. Another featherweight, another Cali native. He's going up in a 10-rounder as well. So be sure to check that out if you can. Those cards are always fun. Now Saturday, this is the rematch between Sergey Crusher Kovalev, the best light heavyweight in the world, and Jean Pascal, the best light heavyweight in Canada. They're doing it again in Montreal at the Bell Center. That's the same venue of the first fight. You guys remember last year they fought in a pretty entertaining scrap. It was an 8th round TKO win for Sergey Kovalev. Really, there wasn't anything in that fight that warranted a rematch, but there's just no options for Sergey right now. There's just slim pickings at light heavyweight. And the other top players in the division just aren't playing ball. So look, I'm not extremely excited for this one, but it is what it is. I think that it's gonna be another entertaining scrap. What I'm interested to see is, will Sergey box smart? Because at times in the first fight, he kind of just got lazy and fell in love with his power and got a little sloppy in there, and Pascal put some leather on him a few times. So it'll be interesting to see, will Pascal just go for broke early on? Will he go out in a shield, or will Sergey come out boxing this time? So it'll be interesting, but I'm not crazy excited about this one. Let's talk about the situation real quick between Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward, who has a fight coming up March 26th against TBA, no opponent named yet. Go figure. That's just the way Andre Ward does business. But according to Kathy Duva at Main Events, the folks at HBO, the folks with Kovalev, they're supposed to fight Andre Ward in November. That's pretty much agreed upon, basically. Andre Ward has been quiet about it because that's just how he is. He hasn't really talked about it, but apparently that's the deal. That's the agreement in principle, that they're gonna fight in November. Now, Kathy Duva has reached out to Vaughn Mitchell, Adonis Stevenson's promoter, going back to October of last year, saying, look, we would love to do a fight between Sergey and Adonis Stevenson in June. And it's got to be pay-per-view to command the money that both guys want, and for the two networks, the situation there and all that stuff. It's got to be pay-per-view. We don't want to do pay-per-view in April because Pacquiao has one, Canelo has one in May, July, August. Those are horrible times to do pay-per-views. And then we have the fight with Ward in November. So look, June is the time. You guys have the availability. Let's make it happen. So Adonis Stevenson has a mandatory to take care of against Alvarez. He can do that in the next few months, and that June date's open. So supposedly, Von Mitchell is supposed to meet with Al Haymon this week to talk about the possibility of that fight. I'm not keeping my hopes up for it, but Kathy Duva has been very, very clear about their schedule, and if Haymon and Stevenson don't want to play ball with that June date, they're still going to fight in June. Kovalev is going to fight this Saturday in June and in November. If Stevenson doesn't want to fight, they're going to fight somebody else. That's it. All right, so also Saturday in Shanghai, China, a city I visited 2 summers ago. Really, really cool city, man. Huge city, ton of people. There's a little card there with Zou Schming making his ring return since his loss last year to the Thai fighter Amnat Ruenroeng. And he's fighting for a vacant minor title against some Brazilian fighter I never heard of. So expect him to get a W here. Let's see what he's been doing for the past year since that loss. Let's see if he's improved on anything. But the fight that I'm excited to see here is undefeated Japanese fighter Ryoto Murata, who's 8-0 with 5 knockouts. He's scheduled for a 10-rounder in this one. Interesting that they're going to put him on, Murata, they're going to put on this Japanese fighter over there in Shanghai, China. They're trying to build up something over there in China. You know, I saw Murata here, or actually in Vegas, ringside, last year. And there was a lot of flaws I saw, still fighting too amateurish for my taste. I'd like to see what kind of changes he's made in this. Is he, you know, progressing as a professional fighter? Because there's a huge market there. If they can get this guy going, if Top Rank can get Murata progressing and becoming a more seasoned pro, man, the sky's the limit for this guy. You know, he was an Olympic gold medalist, I believe, in the middleweight division. Middleweight is wide open right now. There's tons of opportunities. So if this guy can get going and get more busy this year and show some professional fighter progress, there's a lot of potential there for big business down the line. But that's it, guys, for this week. Let me know what you think about, you know, my opinions and everything else. Comment below, share this with your friends. And again, check out the guys at Boxing Hype. And of course, check out Boxing Monthly. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't downloaded the app, well then you're a horrible boxing fan. Get to it.